He stood at my front door, wearing a badge, a gun on his hip, and a cold smile on his face. He said he was HOA security, but what he did next still wakes me up at night. My disabled daughter was behind me, shaking, when this man reached for his weapon, all because I refused to hand over my house key. No warrant, no police car, no legal authority, just a man with a gun, pretending to be law enforcement, abusing power he never had. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten him. I just said one word. No. That's when everything changed. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know my past. And he definitely didn't know that pointing a gun at my child would expose a truth so shocking, it would destroy his fake authority forever. Stay with me, because this isn't just my story. It's a warning. Before I tell you what really happened that night, before I take you inside the fear, the anger, and the moment my world almost shattered, I want to ask you something. Right now, as you're watching this video, what city are you watching from? Are you in New York, Texas, California, Florida, or somewhere in the Midwest? Drop your city name in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know where the story is reaching across America. And if stories like this matter to you, real stories about power, injustice, and standing your ground when it counts the most, then take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. This channel is about truth, courage, and the moments that change us forever. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need to hear them. Now, let me be clear. What you're about to hear is not exaggerated. It's not scripted drama. It's not clickbait. This happened to me, to my family, to my disabled daughter, in the place where she should have felt safest, our own home. One knock on the door turned into a nightmare. One lie about authority turned into a life-threatening moment. And one decision I made to refuse to stand firm exposed something dark that too many Americans don't realize can happen to them. So take a breath. Stay with me. Because from this moment on, I'm going to tell you exactly how a fake HOA cop crossed a line he can never come back from, and how everything unraveled after that knock on my door. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. The kind of night where nothing happens, where the world slows down just enough for you to breathe. My daughter was in the living room, sitting in her wheelchair, humming softly to herself while watching her favorite show. That sound, her humming, has always been my reminder that despite everything she's been through, she still feels safe at home. At least she did. I was in the kitchen rinsing a coffee mug when I heard knock. Not loud, not urgent, just firm enough to make me pause. I checked the clock. It was past 8 p.m. No deliveries. No neighbors I was expecting. That uneasy feeling crept up my spine, the one veterans never really lose. Your body reacts before your mind does. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked toward the front door, keeping my voice calm as I called out, "Yeah?" "HOA security," a man answered. "Need to speak with you." That immediately raised a red flag. Our HOA had rules, annoying ones, but they didn't do nighttime visits. And they sure as hell didn't send security to knock on doors after dark. I opened the door just enough to see him. He was tall, mid-30s maybe, wearing a dark uniform that looked official if you didn't know better. There was a badge clipped to his chest, shiny enough to catch the porch light, a radio on his shoulder. And then I saw it, the gun on his hip. My eyes didn't linger, but my brain cataloged everything. Badge, gun, posture. He was trying to look like law enforcement. "Evening," he said, flashing a tight smile. "We've had reports of unauthorized access to vacant homes in the community. HOA needs a copy of your house key for emergency purposes." I stared at him for a second, waiting for the punchline. "I'm not giving you my house key," I said calmly. His smile vanished. "Sir, it's required," he replied, his tone sharper now. "If there's a fire, flood, or welfare check, we need immediate access." I shook my head. "That's not how this works. HOA doesn't get keys to occupied homes. And you can leave now." That's when his eyes shifted, past me, toward my daughter. She had rolled closer, curious about the voice. The TV was muted now. Her hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair. When she realized a stranger was at the door, her humming stopped. He stared at her for a little too long. She disabled, he asked. Every muscle in my body tightened. That's none of your business. His jaw clenched. Sir, you're being uncooperative. I don't want to escalate this. Escalate. That word carries weight when a man with a gun says it. I've been polite, I said. You've been told no. Leave my property. That's when he stepped closer, crossing the threshold without permission. I raised my hand. Stop. You don't have the right. His hand moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough. His fingers touched the grip of his weapon. My daughter gasped. That sound, that small, terrified breath, cut through me deeper than any explosion I'd ever heard overseas. Daddy, she whispered. In that moment, the world narrowed. No HOA, no neighborhood, no polite conversation. Just a man threatening my child. Step back, I said, my voice low and controlled. Right now. He smirked, then give me the key. I could feel years of discipline holding me together. Training, control, restraint. Every instinct screamed to act, but I didn't. I stayed exactly where I was, blocking his line of sight to my daughter. You are not law enforcement, I said, and you are done here. He laughed, actually laughed. You don't get to tell me what I am. That's when I knew. This man wasn't just abusing authority. He was enjoying it. My daughter started crying. Silent tears rolled down her face, her hands trembling as she tried to turn her wheelchair away. She didn't understand HOA. She didn't understand fake badges. She just saw a man with a gun who wouldn't leave. I felt something inside me break, not explode, not snap, just break, quietly the way trust does. I reached behind me and gently rested my hand on her shoulder. It's okay, I said softly without looking back. I've got you. Then I looked him dead in the eyes. You need to leave before you make a mistake you can't undo. For the first time, his confidence wavered. Is that a threat? He asked. No, I said. That's a warning. He hesitated, just long enough to prove he knew he'd crossed a line. Then his radio crackled. He glanced down at it, annoyed. This isn't over, he muttered. HOA will hear about this. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He stepped back off my porch, adjusted his fake badge, and walked away like he hadn't just traumatized a disabled child in her own home. I shut the door and locked it. Then I dropped to my knees in front of my daughter and held her while she cried. At that moment, I made a promise, not just to her, but to myself. This man didn't know who I was, but he was about to find out. And when he did, everything he thought protected him was going to disappear. After I locked the door, the house felt different. Not quiet, tense, like the walls themselves were listening. I carried my daughter back into the living room, lowered myself onto the couch beside her, and held her until her breathing slowed. Her small fingers gripped my sleeve like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. Is he gone, Daddy? She asked. For now, I said softly. You're safe. But even as the words left my mouth, I didn't fully believe them. I checked every window. Front yard, side yard, the street. His car was gone, but that didn't bring relief. It brought uncertainty. Men like him don't walk away quietly when their authority is challenged. They come back with excuses, paperwork, backup, or lies. I put on the kettle, more out of habit than need. My hands were steady, but my mind wasn't. Years in uniform teach you how to compartmentalize fear, how to push it aside until the job is done. But this wasn't a mission overseas. This was my home, and my daughter was here. I sat at the table and replayed the encounter frame by frame, the badge placement, the uniform seams, the way he'd avoided giving a name, the way he touched his weapon, not like a cop trained in de-escalation, but like someone trying to intimidate. That wasn't a mistake. That was a tactic. I pulled out my phone and searched the HOA website. No mention of HOA security. No emergency key policy. Nothing about armed personnel. I scrolled through the bylaws line by line. This guy was fake, and the fact that he felt comfortable pulling that stunt told me something worse. He'd probably done it before. I called the HOA management office. Voicemail. After-hours line. I left a calm, detailed message and requested a call back first thing in the morning. Then I called the non-emergency police line. I want to report a man impersonating law enforcement. I said, he threatened my disabled child. The dispatcher paused. Can you describe him? I did. Every detail. She asked if he'd identified himself as police. No, I said, but he wore a badge, carried a firearm, and implied authority. That's serious, she replied. An officer will contact you. When I hung up, I felt that familiar shift, the one that happens when you stop reacting and start preparing. I didn't tell my daughter what I was doing. I tucked her into bed early, sat beside her until she fell asleep, and kissed her forehead. Then I got to work. I pulled out an old folder I hadn't touched in years, discharge papers, service records, commendations. Not because I wanted to play the veteran card, but because I knew something. If this turned ugly, credibility would matter. I also pulled footage from my door camera, and that's when my stomach dropped. The camera had caught everything. His face, his badge, his hand touching the gun, my daughter crying in the background. I watched it once, then twice. By the third time, my anger wasn't loud, it was cold. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Sir, this is Officer Reynolds, a calm voice said. We received your report. I explained everything again. He listened without interrupting. You did the right thing by not escalating, he said. We're going to look into this. But I need to be honest, HOA impersonation cases can get complicated. I understand, I replied, but a gun was involved. There was a pause. That changes things, he said. After the call, I barely slept. Every sound outside made my eyes snap open. A passing car. A dog barking. At one point, headlights swept across the bedroom wall, and my heart jumped into my throat. Morning finally came. Sunlight didn't bring peace, it brought clarity. I took the day off work, walked my daughter through her morning routine slowly, gently. She tried to act normal, but I could see it in her eyes. Fear leaves a mark. Mid-morning, my phone rang again. Same number as the night before. We ran the description. Officer Reynolds said, no record of HOA security matching that profile. But there is something else. My grip tightened on the phone. There have been similar complaints in neighboring communities, he continued. Different man. Same tactic. My blood ran cold. How many? I asked. 3 reported. 2 others unreported, according to HOA chatter. This wasn't random. This was a pattern. And here's the part you need to hear carefully, he added. In one case, the resident gave him the key. My stomach turned. What happened? I asked. They were burglarized 2 weeks later. Silence filled the room. He's casing homes, the officer said, using fear and authority to get access. And pointing guns at children? I asked. Yes, he said quietly. That's why we're escalating. That word again. But this time, it meant something different. By noon, 2 marked police cars were parked outside my house. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Whispers traveled fast. An officer knocked, a real one this time. I let them in. They watched the footage. Both went silent. That's brandishing, one said, and impersonation, and coercion, and intimidation of a disabled minor, the other added. They asked me a question that caught me off guard. Would you be willing to pursue charges if we find him? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Not for revenge. For protection. For every family who didn't know better. For every child who couldn't speak up. For my daughter. As they left, one officer turned back. You mentioned on the phone you're a veteran, he said. Yes. He nodded. I figured. You handled yourself like one. After they drove away, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the police. It was the HOA. And the message they left would reveal just how deep this mess really went. The voicemail from the HOA sat on my phone like a loaded weapon. I didn't listen to it right away. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the screen, my daughter's laughter faintly drifting from her room as she played with her tablet. That sound grounded me, reminded me what this was really about. Then I hit play. Hello, this is Karen Mitchell from Horizon Community Management. The woman said, her voice tight, overly professional. We've received reports of an incident involving one of our contracted security personnel at your residence. Please call me back immediately. Contracted. Security personnel. My jaw clenched. I called back. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Harris, she said quickly, thank you for calling back. I want to start by saying we regret any misunderstanding that may have occurred last night. Misunderstanding. I replied. Your security personnel pointed a gun at my disabled daughter. There was a pause, not shock, not confusion. Calculation. That's not what we were told, she said carefully. Then you were lied to, I replied. And I have video. Silence. Longer this time. I see, she said finally. Perhaps we should discuss this calmly. These situations can escalate unnecessarily if. Escalate. I cut in. Your contractor escalated it when he reached for his weapon. Her tone shifted, colder now. Mr. Harris, our HOA operates under strict guidelines. Our security partners are authorized to conduct compliance checks. Armed compliance checks? I asked. Another pause. No, she admitted. They're not authorized to carry firearms. There it was. The crack in the foundation. Then why was he armed? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she tried something else. We'd like to resolve this internally, she said. No need to involve law enforcement or outside parties. These things can affect property values. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insulting. You care more about property values than a child's safety? I asked. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. She sighed. What would you like us to do? I leaned against the counter, staring at the family photos on the wall, my daughter smiling, unaware of how close fear had come to her front door. I want his name, I said, his employer, and proof that he's legally allowed to do what he did. That information is confidential. So is my patience, I replied. You have until the end of today, before this goes public. Her voice sharpened. Are you threatening the HOA? No, I said calmly. I'm warning you. I hung up before she could respond. Within an hour, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Harris, a male voice said. This is Daniel Moore. I oversee regional operations for Horizon. Here we go. I understand there was an unfortunate encounter last night, he continued. We're prepared to offer compensation for any distress caused. Compensation. I asked, you think money fixes this? We believe a settlement would be in everyone's best interest. There was again. Silence over justice. I'm not interested, I said. I want accountability. His voice hardened. Then you leave us no choice but to defend our position. I smiled, but he couldn't see it. You might want to choose your position carefully, I said, because the man you're defending isn't who you think he is. Another pause. I have video, I continued. Police reports. And witnesses, including officers. He cleared his throat. We'll be conducting an internal review. Too late, I replied. Law enforcement already is. That ended the call. That afternoon, a detective showed up, plain clothes, sharp eyes, no small talk. He watched the footage. Then he leaned back in his chair. Your HOA is in trouble, he said. Why? I asked. Because that man isn't licensed security, he replied. Not in the state. My chest tightened. He's not even registered, the detective continued. The badge? Fake. The uniform? Purchased online. The gun? Legally owned, but illegally used. So, how did he get hired? I asked. The detective looked at me for a long moment. That's what we're trying to figure out. By evening, the neighborhood was buzzing. Someone posted on the community Facebook page, anyone else have HOA security knock last night? The comments exploded. Yes, yes, yes. One woman wrote, he asked for my garage code. Another, he walked inside without permission. Another, he scared my kids. My daughter sat beside me as I scrolled. Is that the bad man? She asked quietly. Yes, I said, but he won't hurt anyone again. She nodded, trusting me completely. That trust hit harder than anything else. That night, the detective called again. We identified him, he said. My heart pounded. Name's Ryan Cole, he continued. Former mall security. fired 2 years ago for misconduct. And the HOA? I asked. They never verified him, the detective said. They outsourced to a shell company. No background checks. Negligence. Greed. Silence. Here's the part you need to know, he added. Ryan Cole knows you reported him. I felt the air shift in the room. And I asked, and he's been asking about you. I looked at the locked door, the cameras, the quiet street outside. Good, I said, because I'm done being quiet. That night, I drafted a statement, clear, factual, unemotional. I sent it to local media. I sent it to a veterans legal advocacy group. And I sent it to the HOA board. The subject line read, Armed Impersonation Incident Formal Notice. The next morning, the story broke. And everything, absolutely everything, spiraled out of control. The news van showed up before breakfast. I knew things were serious when I pulled back the curtain and saw a satellite truck parked half a block away. A reporter stood on the sidewalk, rehearsing lines, microphone in hand, while a cameraman adjusted his lens toward my house. My house, the place where my daughter learned to feel safe again, just hours earlier. I closed the curtain slowly, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with the weight of what was coming next. Once a story like this goes public, there's no taking it back. No rewinding. No quiet ending. Daddy, my daughter called from the hallway. I turned and forced a smile. It's okay. Remember what I told you? Sometimes the truth gets loud before things get better. She nodded, trusting me the way only a child can. I called the detective. They're here, I said. I figured, he replied. Media picked it up fast. HOA board is panicking. That didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was the knock on the door. This time it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't demanding. It was hesitant. I checked the camera. 2 men in suits. HOA board members. I opened the door, just enough to hear them. Mr. Harris, one of them began, already sweating, we'd like to speak privately. No, I said calmly. You can speak on record, or you can leave. They exchanged glances. We're very concerned about how this situation has been portrayed, the other said. There's a lot of misinformation. I laughed under my breath. There's video, I said. That's not misinformation. We're prepared to terminate the contract immediately, the first one said, and issue a statement. After he threatened a child? I asked. After you try to bury it? Silence. I leaned closer. You didn't protect this community, I said. You protected yourselves. One of them tried a different angle. Think about your daughter, he said quietly. Do you really want her face tied to this story? That's when my calm cracked. You already tied her to it, I snapped, by letting an armed imposter roam our neighborhood. I closed the door, locked it. Then I sat down at the table and shook for the first time since this started, not from fear, from anger. By noon, the story was everywhere. Local news, online headlines, social media clips, fake HOA security threatens disabled child at gunpoint. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Support poured in, veterans, parents, disability advocates, neighbors I'd never spoken to before. But so did the hate. Messages calling me a liar, accusing me of exaggeration, telling me I should have just given the key. One comment cut deeper than the rest. If you were really a man, you'd have handled it yourself. I stared at that one for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because real strength isn't violence. It's restraint. That afternoon, the detective came back, this time with urgency written all over his face. We have a situation, he said as soon as he stepped inside. What kind? I asked. Ryan Cole showed up at the HOA office, he said, demanding to speak with management. My chest tightened. Armed? Yes. I felt my blood run cold. They detained him. The detective continued quickly. No one was hurt, but he resisted. Did he say anything? I asked. The detective hesitated. He claimed you ruined his life, he said, and that you had no idea who you messed with. That night, patrol cars sat at the end of my street. Lights off, engines running. Protection, but also a reminder. This wasn't over. I barely slept. Around 2 a.m., my daughter woke up crying. "He's coming back," she said through tears. "I saw him." I held her until she calmed down, whispering the same promise over and over. "He can't hurt you. Not anymore." But inside, I was making plans. The next morning, my attorney called. "You have a strong case," she said, "against him and against the HOA. "Good," I replied, "because I'm not backing down." By midday, the HOA issued a public apology. It rang hollow. They admitted procedural failures. They avoided the word gun. They never mentioned my daughter. That was their mistake. Because the public did. Advocacy groups reached out. Disability rights organizations demanded answers. Veterans groups amplified the story. Pressure mounted. Then came the call that changed everything. The detective's voice was tight. "He's been formally charged," she said, "impersonating an officer, brandishing a firearm, coercion, child endangerment." I closed my eyes. "And the HOA?" I asked. "They're under investigation for negligence," he replied, "and obstruction." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. That evening, my daughter and I sat on the porch together. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft colors. "Is it over?" she asked. "Almost," I said. She leaned against me. "You were brave, Daddy." I swallowed hard. "No," I said softly. "I was prepared." And that made all the difference. But the final twist, the one that no one saw coming, was still waiting. The courtroom smelled like old paper and disinfectant. It was quiet in a way that felt heavier than silence, the kind where every cough, every shuffle of feet, echoed like it mattered. I held my daughter's hand as we sat on the wooden bench, waiting for the case to be called. She wore her favorite blue sweater, the one she put on when she wanted to feel brave. "You okay?" I whispered. She nodded. "I want to see him." That surprised me. "You don't have to," I said gently. "I know," she replied, "but I want him to see me." Those words hit me harder than anything that had happened so far. When they brought him in, the room shifted. Ryan Cole didn't look powerful anymore. No uniform, no badge, no gun, just a wrinkled shirt, unshaven face, and eyes that darted around like a trapped animal. When he saw us, his jaw tightened. The judge entered. The charges were read. Impersonating law enforcement, brandishing a firearm, coercion, child endangerment. Each count landed like a weight. The prosecutor played the video. The room went still. My daughter's gasp echoed through the speakers. Her crying. My voice, calm, controlled, shaking just beneath the surface. A woman in the gallery covered her mouth. The judge watched without blinking. When it ended, the defense attorney stood. "My client never intended harm," he said. "This was a misunderstanding fueled by fear and poor judgment." I felt my daughter squeeze my hand. The prosecutor didn't hesitate. "Fear," she said, turning to the judge, "is exactly what the defendant used as a weapon." Then she looked at us. "Permission to call the victim's father." I stood. Walking to the stand felt like crossing a bridge with no railing. I told the truth. No drama. No exaggeration. Just facts. And then the judge asked me a question I wasn't prepared for. "Why didn't you respond with force?" she asked. The room held its breath. "Because," I said, "my daughter was watching." Silence. Ryan Cole stared at the table. The judge nodded slowly. Then came the moment no one expected. The judge asked my daughter if she wished to speak. I looked at her. She looked back. "I want to," she said quietly. The courtroom leaned forward as she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "I was scared," she said. "I thought I was going to die. But my daddy didn't yell. He didn't hurt anyone. He just stood there." She turned and looked at Ryan. "You shouldn't scare kids." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The judge recessed for deliberation. When she returned, her voice was firm. "Mr. Cole," she said, "you abused authority you did not possess. You endangered a child. You will serve time." The gavel fell. My daughter exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. But justice didn't stop there. The judge turned to the HOA's legal counsel. "This court is referring this matter for civil review," she said. "Gross negligence will not be ignored." Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I gave one statement. This isn't about revenge, I said. It's about making sure no child ever feels that fear in their own home again. That night, something unexpected happened. Ryan Cole's mother called me. She cried. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't raise him like this. I listened. I forgive you, I said, but he has to face what he did. After the call, I sat with my daughter on the couch. You were really brave, I told her. She smiled. So were you. I shook my head. No, I said, I was a father. The HOA resigned 2 board members the next week. New policies were announced. Security contracts were audited. Change, real change, was happening. But the final moment, the one that stayed with me the most, came later. A letter arrived in the mail, handwritten, from a neighbor. It read, Because of you, I didn't open my door to a man with a badge last night. Thank you. I folded the letter carefully. That's when I realized this wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to everyone who decided fear wouldn't win. Life didn't snap back to normal after the verdict. It settled into something new, quieter in some ways, heavier in others. For weeks after the trial, my daughter slept with her bedroom light on. I didn't tell her to turn it off. Healing doesn't follow rules, and it definitely doesn't follow timelines. Some nights, I'd sit in the hallway outside her door, listening to her breathe, reminding myself that safety isn't just about locks and cameras, it's about presence. Word spread through the community. People I'd never spoken to before waved, stopped me at the mailbox, thanked me, apologized for not speaking up sooner. One older man, a Vietnam vet, shook my hand with both of his and said, You did what many of us wish we'd done years ago. That stayed with me. The HOA changed, at least on paper. New leadership, transparent policies, no armed contractors, mandatory verification. They invited residents to town halls. I attended exactly one. Not to argue, to listen. People shared stories. Small ones, big ones, near misses, moments where fear told them to comply instead of question. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about a fake badge or a gun. It was about how easily we're conditioned to obey authority even when it doesn't feel right. Especially when it doesn't feel right. One afternoon, my daughter asked if we could plant something in the front yard. Like a tree? I asked. No, she said. Flowers. So people know good things live here. We planted them together, yellow ones, bright, impossible to ignore. Every time I water them, I think about how close we came to letting fear take root instead. The legal side wrapped up quietly. Settlements, policy changes, training mandates, headlines faded. That's how the world works. Outrage burns fast, then moves on. But inside our home, something permanent remained. A lesson. I taught my daughter how to ask questions, not just why, but who says. I taught her that uniforms don't equal truth. That real authority doesn't need to threaten. That courage can be calm. And she taught me something too. One night, months later, we heard a knock. A normal one. I looked at her. She looked at me. You want me to answer? I asked. She nodded. I opened the door. A neighbor stood there holding cookies. Just wanted to say, hi, she said, and thank you. After she left, my daughter smiled. I wasn't scared, she said. That was the real victory. Not the court ruling. Not the headlines. Not the charges. That moment. Because here's the truth. And this is why I'm telling you this story. What happened to us can happen anywhere. Any city. Any neighborhood. Any family. All it takes is someone pretending to have power and someone else being too afraid to say no. If you remember nothing else from this story, remember this. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to say no. And you are allowed to protect your home without apology. Especially when a child is watching. If this story moved you, if it made you angry or thoughtful or more aware, then don't keep it to yourself. Backhand index pointing right, comment your city below so others know this message is reaching everywhere. Backhand index pointing right, share this video with someone you care about, especially parents, veterans, or neighbors who trust authority too easily. Backhand index pointing right, and subscribe to this channel if you believe real stories like this need to be told, not buried. Because silence protects the wrong people. And the moment we stop speaking up is the moment fear wins. Thank you for listening.